Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. Today I want to focus on two New Testament verses that prove that Jesus was just a prophet and that's it. And I'm going to be quoting from the New Testament, not anti-supernatural liberal scholarship, not conservative scholarship, but from the New Testament itself, from the Gospels itself. According to the Quran, according to the Quran, chapter 2, verse 130 to 136, and the Quran, chapter 4, verse 161 to 163, uh, Jesus is only a prophet according to Islamic theology. So Christians say that, yeah, that's one of the things Jesus was, a prophet. But a closer examination of the verses show that that isn't really, that's not the case. For example, there's two verses I want to focus on, and that's the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, or I'm sorry, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 21, verse 11, and the Gospel of Luke, chapter 4, verse 24. And I'll read the verses. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 4, verse 24, it says, "Truly I tell you," he continued, "no prophet is accepted in his town." So Jesus himself is saying, according to the New Testament Gospels, not some anti-supernatural liberal scholar or anything like that. According to the New Testament, according to the Gospels themselves, Jesus is clearly saying he's a prophet. Now, if Jesus was really God or the Son of God or the first part of the Trinity or the second head of the Trinity, wouldn't Jesus say that? Why did he have to say he's a prophet according to the Gospel of Luke chapter 4 verse 24? So that's further proof that Jesus himself, Jesus taught of himself as a prophet. He was thinking of himself as a prophet, not as God or the God or second part of the Godhead or whatever. And if we read further, if we read the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 21, verse 11, it says, and this is what the verse says. And again, I'm reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 21, verse 11, the NIV, the New International Version. So I read the Gospel of Luke from the NIV, the New International Version, and I'm reading uh, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 21, verse 11, from the NIV. So it says, "The crowds answered, 'This is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth in Galilee.'" So the people around Jesus, the crowds, thought that Jesus was a prophet from God, from Nazareth. So if Jesus was really God, if he was really the Son of God, if he was really, the literal Son of God, if he was really the second part of the Trinity, wouldn't Jesus himself say that in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 4, verse 24? Why did Jesus say he's a prophet? That's further indication that Jesus himself thought of himself as a prophet, not as God or not as the Son of God and stuff like that. If Jesus really said he is God, or if Jesus really thought that he was God or the Son of God or the second part of the Trinity, um, he would have said it in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 4, verse 24. But no, Jesus says he's just a prophet. He doesn't say, "I'm a prophet and I'm God and I'm the Son of God and I'm the second part of the Trinity." No, Jesus just says he's a prophet. That's it, according to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 4, verse 24, according to the NIV version. According to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 21, verse 11, the people around Jesus, the people around Jesus thought of him as a prophet. They said, "This is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." So that means that the people who knew Jesus, who walked with Jesus, uh, who associated with Jesus, who learned from Jesus, uh, who listened to Jesus, who were around Jesus most of the time, the crowds themselves thought that Jesus was just a prophet. So if the people around Jesus, if Jesus' closest friends and followers and uh, his group of his network of friends or his followers, if they really thought he was God or the Son of God or the second part of the Trinity, um, they would have said they would have said, "This is Jesus, the God," or the Son of God, or the second part of the Trinity. That means that according to the Christian view, Jesus is the worst communicator ever, because he wasn't able to clearly identify himself. If what the Christians say about him is correct, that he's God or the Son of God, right, and things like that. So it makes more sense to say Jesus is a prophet, because according to the New Testament, according to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 21 verse 11, and the Gospel of Luke chapter 4 verse 24, and Jesus thinks of himself as a prophet. In the Gospel of Luke. In the Gospel of Matthew, the people around Jesus, the people who knew Jesus, the people who were friends with Jesus, the people who associated with Jesus, said that he's a prophet. They said, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." So that's further indication that Jesus is just a prophet. He's no more, he's no less, according to the New Testament, according to the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. The verses again, the verses are the Gospel of Matthew chapter 21 verse 11, and the Gospel of Luke chapter 4 verse 24. So that's further indication that Islam's version of Jesus is true according to the standards of the New Testament, according to the verses from the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. So, so this confirms the Islamic position, and this causes serious doubt, or this contradicts the Christian version, the Christian view of Jesus, that Jesus is God, or the second part of the Trinity, or he's the literal Son of God, etc., etc. So keep Occam's razor in mind. The Islamic version of Jesus is less complicated than the Christian version of Jesus, that elevates him to a divine position. So the Islamic version of Jesus is confirmed by the pages of the New Testament itself. Thanks, so.